I mean, there should be an option to where you can change how the layout looks to you, but I'm not sure how it works on the phone.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, you can switch it to have like your picture smaller or mine bigger or the same size. You can play with it a little bit.
Okay. All right.
This is your
Very good.
first. This is your first appearance in person on a show.
First appearance other than my own 8-minute video on how to connect to the divinity inside of you, the God's or soul self.
Okay.
The only video I've done.
Well, welcome, Jolene.
Thank you, Gary.
You are, I think, number 7 or 8.
Right on. I love number 8. 7 is a divine number 2. They're all
Yeah.
great.
Yep. Um, yeah, I've actually had a lot more interest in this than I thought. I thought I was gonna have to try and like manage it more or try and find people, but I've had to do the opposite and kind of step back for a second because it's gonna be too much if I don't slow down a little bit. But it's
Yeah.
good also. It's good having so much interest in uh, open, honest discourse. I guess you could call it.
Are we on air now?
Yes. You're not. It's
Oh,
not. It's not. No, no, no. It's not on air. It's recording though. So yeah.
all right.
I like to surprise people.
You surprised me.
Yeah. See if I can, poke you a little bit, get you to jump and whatnot.
All right. So you've had a good turnout, and we plan to talk about the calling today, the awakening, the calling of your authentic self.
Yep. Yep. So I guess that would be contrasted with the Matrix life, right? What you're presented with when you come in, which is kind of the opposite. They're kind of like opposed to one another.
Yeah, very much so. A very big opposition that I don't think you get to self-actualize until a certain juncture on your journey, where you're either at your very lowest, um, darkest place, or somebody else has illuminated you to help you along your path. So
Mm-hmm.
that's the way I would see how your beginning starts of your awakening.
Yeah, there are a lot of. I see it every day when people are. There's a lot of people going through the dark night of the soul currently, and just in general, I think that's always been happening, but there has been more suppression on just even people being allowed to express that because the medical community has diagnoses for basically every spiritual it's all spiritual stuff, but they put things like, oh, you got schizophrenia or you got paranoia or they have a medical term for every single spiritual like growth opportunity, I guess you could call it, and then they stock you full of pharmaceuticals, and then that stops you kind of from looking into yourself, but at the same time that's also pushing you toward your rock bottom, which is gonna be necessary anyway. So like, I don't really see any of the the stuff people like to whine and bitch and moan about in this life. I don't see it necessarily as a problem because it's like you said, you need to get pushed to a certain spot.
Yeah,
You need to get pushed to a certain spot to even be able to see. Who is that?
I think. Yeah, do you hear like an ice cream truck or something in the background? What is that noise?
It's a phone. Someone left their phone downstairs and it's just going off.
Okay.
It's not an ice cream truck. I wish it was an ice cream truck.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the
Is there more?
awakening of the authentic self,
Yeah.
for so many, it comes from this dark night of the soul, right? And
Mm-hmm.
we go through this dark night of the soul several times throughout this awakening process. I got goosebumps even saying that because I went through a serious one last year. Um, yeah, and each time you're going through the dark night of the soul, you're peeling back these layers of yourself, of your what you came into this world and you were wired to believe, You're wired, you're programmed to believe, you're programmed to think, act, feel, say, speak, react, not react. And each dark night of the soul, you're breaking down these layers, but I don't think you really realize it until you've hit like a third dark night of the soul, or several of them, many of them for several of us, you know. And I think for myself, in my own experience, my third dark night of the soul, when I went purposefully in healing through the darkness, I took advantage of the dark that I was in. It was such a different level of dark night of the soul, because the other two that I had gone through, they didn't progress me enough, Gary, and I was still kind of stuck in trauma and triggers, and I really didn't reach the authentic level of myself. And I'm still not there. But I think when we go through a series of these dark nights, there is a particular one that we will remember individually. And that one propels our soul's expression. It propels us to this authentic place that you're really aware of how you're thinking. You're really aware of how you're feeling, and you're able to manipulate the energy, you know, the alchemy, the energy alchemy.
Right.
And that is, that, you know, that takes 2, 3, 4 times for somebody to, are you eating ice cream? Yeah.
How's that for a manifestation? We just talked about ice cream trucks, and now I have an ice cream.
Right on for manifestation. Yeah, when you reach that level, that third or fourth dark night of the soul, I think you really get to the authentic place in yourself. You've got to grasp on it at least. You've got to grasp on your mentalism. You've got to grasp on your emotions. You've got to grasp on the matrix, you know, all the information out there, the constructs, and you know how to work the energy inwardly to manifest ice cream.
Right. Right. Yeah, it's a process that I see of coming out of, well, obviously coming out of victim mode is very important, but at the same time, you need to go through the victim mode, I think, first to feel that side of it out, because, you know, being a victim is not just like, oh, you know, they should be learning from their challenge. It just actually sucks as well. Like, it's not fun to be targeted by whoever or whatever, and it's not fun, you know. So like, you have to go through that. You have to see what it feels like to actually feel this active oppression.
Yeah.
But then once you get through that, like for me, most of the things that come in that are difficult, it's just, I see it as it's some sort of energy that I can do something with, rather than, there's always the option to, you know, crawl into the bed under the covers and like hide my head or whatever, right? But if you don't do that, then you can use it as like a launching point. You can use that energy, you can turn it around. Even hate energy, you can turn that around. You can go for a run, you can like put that into your business. If you're trying to do some business, use the energy, and it will change into something beneficial.
Right. And often, you know, being stuck in that oppressed mode, targeted individual, program survivor, abuse survivor, you're a victim, you're being victimized, and you're in the victim mode. But then, you know, we have this life energy we get into of the surviving. And I think you need to go through another dark night of the soul to get through the survival mode. So you're in victim mode, then you live in survival mode, and then maybe you have another awakening, and you're no longer either of those two things. You're no longer the victim, you're no longer the survivor. You're in more of an authentic place where you can control yourself. At least that's what I would healthily guide somebody to do. I don't know if you could just go from victim to thriver.
No, it's difficult.
I'm sure some people can, but many people get stuck in that surviving mode. You know, they're just for survival, and I was stuck there for a long time. You know, I was really very angry, blaming, and many TIs tend to stay in a survival mode, victimized surviving mode, and I think it's a really important place to experience as well, So when you're out of those two levels, you're now in control of your authentic being. You're in control of the matrix. The matrix no longer has control over you. You're gliding through circumstances. You're gliding through chaos storms. Not that they're fun or anything, and not that they're not heavy energy, but you at least have a grasp on victimization, surviving, and you have a grasp on the constructs all around you to understand how to change the energy, whether you're destroying, creating, or neutralizing, and then how to basically work the system, how to work this computer game that we're in.
Yeah, I think in terms of the first transition from, and I'm not trying to say that these three things we're saying is just how everybody goes through it. It's just one way of framing it. But I know that from victim to survivor, surviving feels like a step up, because in pure victimhood, you were just like, the abuse is literally the whole thing in your life. Like, that is what moves you. That's what you're using to basically base all of your movements, whether it's evasion or whether it's attacking or whether it's trying to, you know, manipulate them back or something, right? So like, if you're stepping out of that into surviving, then surviving almost feels like a step up, because now you're not being victimized and you're barely having enough to survive or to exist, right? So it feels like a step up, and people, I think, get comfortable in that spot because they feel that they're doing better than they were as purely a victim. So going from that to basically living and thriving and actually interacting with other humans and having a sort of beneficial energy exchange without having all of these like self-doubts and self, you know, judgments and all of that, it becomes, it's like you take what you learned from the previous two and you can use them. They become tools.
Right. They do become tools. And I think each time you progress through a dark night of the soul, you're experiencing that victimization over again. You're experiencing the survivorhood over again. You're experiencing the gnarly climbing out of those two regions and territories, relearning things, reprogram. You're really reprogramming your whole synapses, right? You're reprogramming the way you think, the way you behave, the way you feel.
And sometimes I feel like the existence will give you back the same sort of circumstances you had in the first two, and you'll be seeing them in a new light. So you'll have to sort of transmute this stuff in a new way that's actually beneficial, instead of seeing it, you know, seeing this energy as just attacking me or what can I get from it only. Then you see it in a different light.
So wouldn't you expect it to be that way? You're plugged into the Wi-Fi of the universe or infinite source. And I firmly feel that you're reflecting back your lessons that you've learned through these pieces. If you're not given the same tests, how are you, or more advanced tests as you're progressing, how would you know that you're progressing? So, right. You know, when a shitstorm comes my way, do I react like a victim anymore? Do I react like a survivor anymore? The universe, I think, wants to test us out to see our progression of our soul's role. And this, you know, a lot of people come to me and they want to know, you know, like what their soul's purpose is and their soul's role. And I think a lot of people have this backwards, because the soul's purpose is to come here and live. To come here, live and navigate through the system, to live your life, to get to a level of peace and understanding and happiness within, learn your lessons, glide through the lessons. That's your purpose, to live. So your soul's role is a different dynamic than your soul's purpose. Your soul's purpose is to come here and live. And I think through the awakening of the authentic self is when you get your soul's role, you know, your soul's I don't know. No, I mean, like for me, it's teaching.
Yeah, like the
Teaching
sort of active way that you interact, right, with the
right,
rest of the
how
people
to
and all
interact.
that, right? And you know, there is a thing of that I see quite often where people people will try and teach, or they will try and pontificate on all these subjects, and then at the same time, you know, their behavior is opposite. Like there's disrespect toward themselves and toward other people in many different ways, and at the same time, they're acting as a guru or a teacher or something, and it's not matching up. And like I know that's a trap that I fall into it sometimes. It's a trap that anybody can fall into, especially if you're on your path. You know, you're trying to figure the thing out, and you get something and you figured it out, but then you may not even notice how you're treating people. Like you may not notice how you're being you're just you're not being courteous, you're not being respectful, or noticing how your movements interact with them. And then you're still trying to teach, and it just doesn't work. Like it appears very upside down. So that's a
Yeah,
trap. It's a trap you can fall into, but if you're willing to like allow someone else to reflect that back to you and see that, then you know everybody can always reset. You can always reset what you're doing and come back to presence, and like just offload all the conceptual jargon and bullshit, right? And come back, and then you can refresh and go somewhere else after that.
yeah. I think for some of us out there, as a counselor and a teacher myself, um, I I couldn't work. I couldn't work in the condition I was in at all.
Mm-hmm.
And prior to that, I ethically and morally have a responsibility if I'm going to be a teacher and a counselor. I'm not going to pretend anything either. If I was in a shit mood, I posted I was in a shit mood. If I wanted to swear, I swear. I want to be as authentic as I possibly can. I don't want to be I don't want to pretend I'm some perfect human being counseling and teaching people.
Mm-hmm.
In the condition I'm in now, the level of authenticity I'm in now, I'm in such a better place where I'm not taking on clients every day. I'm not working with people that won't do the work. So we navigate through as we're going if we're leaders in the community. And I don't like to use these labels, leaders, teachers,
Mm-hmm.
healers. We're just here guiding each other. But
Right.
yeah, I see it in our community all the time. I mean, you see people out there that are teaching and leading, yet they'll hate their colleagues.
Right.
They'll gossip about others. I've not played that game. I don't like that game. I don't want that game, and I've never been part of that game. So, um, yeah, I think if you're going to be in this type of service to others, you have to be really authentic with who you are.
Yeah, and also I know like we like to we want to put out the best side of ourselves in every single sort of thing we do. Like that's kind of, especially on social media, you know, the whole way that it's there is like it kind of makes you want to put out your best foot, or your you know your nicest looking selfie and whatnot. But if you're actually trying to give energy to the people or give a message to the people, I think they appreciate, because everyone's been fed so much bullshit with consumerism and the ads and the useless nonsense, endless, just, and not even just useless, it's actively harmful for the most part. Most of the products are actively harmful. Like people like it when leaders can say like, I fucked up, I feel like shit, you know, I was mean, I was rude, I was whatever, and then it actually it gives more trust to you as a leader in the community, because then they see you're human too, and it gives them permission to like be honest with themselves about whatever they're going through.
I think it's so important, Gary. We're human beings here. We are human beings in a pretty hard game here. This is a hard matrix, right? These
Mm-hmm.
constructs to break down, the levels in yourself to break down. the knowing thyself, the, you know, dismantling of your old life into a new paradigm. You know, it's all, you're navigating through these areas that you've never been through. So if you can't be completely authentic, even when you're screwing up, I don't want to deal with a person who can't admit that they screwed up, or they can't apologize, or they can't make a mistake. That's not authentic.
Yeah.
There's something very wrong with that narcissistic type of unconscious being, and we've got enough of that in our world. If we're in this awakened community, we better be conscious human beings with at least that type of ethical value to admit when we fuck up. Excuse me for swearing.
No, it's fine.
When we screw up.
I condone cursing.
Now, we're not all humans here, and I have no shame in apologizing. I'm a very humble person, and I think if somebody's not humble and they don't own that virtue, and they feel that they can't humble themselves and apologize or admit that they're wrong, then back off my energy field, man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it can go very deep in terms of, because we can convince ourselves of anything, you know, logically. If we are very strong in needing to be right, then we can convince ourselves that we are 100% right, and whoever we're pissed off at is completely wrong, and no amount of anything that person is going to do, if you're holding that strongly onto the need to be right, is going to change the perception that they are 100% right, and that's just harmful. They're lying to themselves, and the victim usually sees clearer, you know, the sort of manipulation, because this manipulation is so subtle. It's just very subtle, you know. It's just a form of It's a form of lying. Like narcissism is a form of lying.
Yeah.
It's somebody having feelings.
Yeah. With narcissism, and it's a slow progression. It's very, very hard to dissect when it's happening, right? So it's a slow progression of psychological manipulation. And I don't even know if some of these narcissists, you know, there's so many types out there, whether they're overt, covert, malignant, passive. I don't even know if they're conscious to how indignant they are. I think if you own, I talked about it, I don't know, probably on the James Bartley show, I spoke about the 6 heartfelt virtues. And I think even if we haven't come to a completely knowing ourselves or being able to monitor our thoughts and emotions and come into this real authentic place, I think if you can own those 6 virtues, you could navigate life so much easier.
What are they?
Appreciation. So you appreciate the level of understanding somebody's at. Understanding is the next. You understand. You might have worn their shoes before. You might have been in their position before. Mm-hmm. So appreciation, understanding, compassion, humility, forgiveness, and valor. Mm. And those are very beautiful things to own, but even in a narcissistic dynamic, you know, you can get lost in that. I mean, you could really end up getting lost in that. I know I did.
Yeah.
Even having those virtues, I ended up compromising my own beliefs, compromising my own decisions, compromising my own choices. Not necessarily, you know, you're being talked out of it, but it's in such a progressive way that you don't even realize you don't have a voice anymore. You don't have your human right anymore. And by the time you realize that it's been taken, you're so angry and or beaten down, one of the two. I don't know how we got on that subject, but I think we discussed a little bit.
Yeah.
The topic of communication. So, you know, you can be a really smart individual and have all these ethics and stuff, but can it navigate you through the narcissism? I think it really gets
especially I think if it's just two people that's in the dynamic, and you have one sort of submissive or one victim, and you have one narcissist, then they can stay in that. Are you there, Jolene? Your
Yeah,
picture.
I'm here. I just turned the video off because I wanted to
Okay.
move around a little bit. Sorry about
Yeah.
that.
But I was just saying, like, the if the dynamic is kept to just the victim and the perpetrator, they both sink into those roles and they start doing Stockholm syndrome with them, and they get comfortable with them, and it's difficult to see outside of that when it's just the two people. So you really need some outside help. But then again, we have, the whole therapy system, which is not really great. And you have to pay money for it. You need some outside, like, neutral help. But then again, if you have family, then the family are all invested one way or the other. And it's so tangled up that it's difficult for someone to get a very clear, neutral outsider's perspective. That would help. That would help both sides see, like, this is a harmful dynamic. But
I,
that's what people
I,
need, though.
yeah, even being a teacher counselor, I was in one of those highly abusive relationships. And it was hard for me to navigate through that. So sorry about that. I thought I turned my notifications off.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for a women's resource center educating me on the dynamics of what I was in, I wouldn't have been able to see it either. But again, it was still hard for me to navigate through, and that's what led me to really study this dynamic of the narcissist and the codependent, and realize that's the dynamic involved in society. You're one or the other. And I think healthy narcissism is sort of like the healthy ego,
Mm-hmm.
But I consider myself an educated, intelligent woman. I consider myself emotionally mature.
Mm-hmm.
But I was stuck there too, Gary, and it took professionals to illuminate me. And then friends to really pull me out by, my bootstraps when I was, in my darkest moments.
Yep.
And it took me 19 years to get out. And I consider myself a teacher counselor. So how do you break that down when you're in those dynamics? I think I needed to go that route in order to be able to help others out of that journey themselves, reform new education, reform new laws and things like that I'm actually working with, and hope to be working more with my state senate and my local resource centers and abuse centers and throughout my state. So that's kind of what brought me, I think, what my purpose was living through this 19-year. It was technically a 15-year relationship and an additional 4 years on and off before,
Yeah.
I really.
Well, that's the benefit, I guess you could say, to a situation that does become that dark, is that when you're able to extract from it, then you have a voice and you're willing to use your voice, then you are a source of comfort and emotional support for people who are either currently in those situations or maybe freshly out of it, and they don't have support, like people like you and me to an extent. It's just a support system. It lets people feel like they're not alone, because when you're in that situation, it does feel like it's you and your dark night, because the narcissist does not give a shit whatsoever about you, and they only care about themselves, and that's just what it is. So, like, to know that you have support is very important, and
It also
people
gave me
don't have it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
I'm
it's
sorry.
okay. I just feel like there's a lot of isolation, and people kind of do the taking the world on their shoulders thing.
Yeah. Well, that was one thing I learned through it, because after the 15 years, we had broken up, and within those 3 years, I thought I got strong again. I was on my own, independent, but learning to take somebody back like that had to happen so I could help others navigate through. And, I wish somebody would have helped me navigate through this. I was at a very vulnerable point where when in the position, I learned in my position as a teacher and a counselor, I didn't have friends, Gary. I had no real friends around me. I had very little family, I had no real friends. I wouldn't let friends in because the friends I had let in, I didn't have enough radar especially with my psychic senses. I was just so vulnerable for that companionship. I was letting narcissists in left and right. So I finally stopped letting friends in until about 2 years ago. And had I not made all of these crucial mistakes, I've made all these crucial mistakes. So maybe I can help somebody not make those same mistakes. It was hugest learning experience of my life. And I've been through, sexual abuse, SRA abuse, program abuse, pharmaceutical abuse, growing up all these programs and projects. This was the worst form of abuse I have ever endured, but it's the most soul growth and I'm sure you can agree, you've survived it. I think you survive a dynamic like that, you come out so much more self-aware. You come out so much more educated on not only your codependency side, but the narcissistic mind, the criminal mind. I mean, that's a criminal mind you're almost dealing with, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's on some level of that, and to me, it's like a blindness. The people who are that, they are blind, and part of it is also whatever it is that I call self work and sort of like self reflection throughout your day, and all of this. Like the narcissist doesn't really do that. So there isn't any mirroring process for them to even look at themselves. So they just have a free hand basically, without outside accountability to just do as they please. And that's how I've seen it. And my best way of dealing with it has always been, I see it as like a loosh situation. Basically, it's an energy harvesting situation, and it's my right to refuse to have my energy stolen. And it doesn't mean I'm going to be mean to this person. It doesn't mean I need to lash out and attack them. It just means internally, when I can feel that energy is trying to be sucked out, I can energetically say no, And the communications with the person, the narcissist, can be neutral and still kind and compassionate. You don't have to actually hold resentment. You can still treat them as a human being, but you can just cut that flow off immediately.
Yeah, I totally understand. We're living in this narcissist system. I've been talking about this narcissist system. I coined the term from my friend Adam Yogi Sanchez, the astrologer. He calls it the narcissist system. And we're dealing with this dynamic out in society, in the stores we go to, the public places we visit. So we can be kind, we can be neutral, and we still can be kind. We can also put our boundaries up and say a firm no without an aggressive state, because when you've learned how to speak boundaries, it takes some people years to really speak boundaries, especially after they've been talked out of them for so long. But once you learn to speak the boundaries and you get to the level of healing, you don't have the anger attached to saying no. You don't have the anger attached to when maybe they attack you with aggressive words or the lies or devaluing or whatever, whatever they're coming at you. I don't think that fuse is lit anymore energetically if the self-healing has taken place. So you can still say a firm no. There doesn't have to be anger attached to it. There's a neutralization, because as the healed codependent, that's not a personal reflection of you. That's a personal inner reflection of their own inner hate, inner guilt. And it almost makes me feel so much more compassion, almost a pitied compassion. Like I feel so bad that they're so damn lost in that ignorance. but still, the fuse of anger is really, you've self-healed when the fuse of anger is no longer there, when you're saying no and standing in your boundaries.
Right.
So that takes a level of comprehension and a level of peeling back layers. And also, it's when somebody says no, when they exhibit their human rights and their needs, their expression of their needs, maybe the narcissist takes it as anger, as fuel for them. But again, when you've diffused self-healing, that's where you can offer them the compassion inwardly. You still detach from them, but you hold the compassion for them that,
Yeah.
I'm not going to get my fuel.
I think also to be very aware that the people that are living in that state, they have a flawed view, like a worldview of humans, especially the targeted humans. Like for my case, my example, by most people's definition and understanding of me, I'm fairly regular of a person. I'm not like super eccentric one way or the other, and I'm a kind person. Like I'm nice to be around, essentially, right? For the most part. And the narcissist they will just somehow ignore all of that and create internally an image that I'm a villain or I'm this uncaring, uncompassionate person. And they don't say it necessarily in words, but it's the thing that you hold inside, your view of the other person, that comes out in the subtle judgments, in the sort of sarcastic this and that. It comes out subtly, sometimes aggressively, but it's just the fact that they're holding what would be judged by all neutral observers as a very flawed worldview or view of you, and it comes out in every interaction that they say. So like, for me to realize, I just had to realize like their view is just completely incorrect, and it doesn't reflect anything of what I actually am. So which makes it sort of a silly thing. Like it's not even really relative to me. It's more like, oh, that person over there is doing that, but it's not really relative to what I actually am. So I can be neutral about that, because they will be absolutely ridiculous with it. They will be like just, and I know everybody listening who's had a relationship like that knows what it is. Like, to call it lies is almost an understatement. It's just completely.
Yeah. It's absurdity, right?
Yeah.
It's absurdity and insanity, and we don't want to. We don't want to absorb that. I'd rather observe than absorb. And I've taken that from one of the narcissist coaches out on YouTube. I can't remember if it's. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Oh God, I don't know who's calling. It's gonna ring.
You have a landline?
Yeah, I got a landline.
Nice.
Yeah, the absurdity and the insanity of some of these things that they're projecting out.
Mm-hmm.
I remember a time where, can you remember back when you took it as the victim? Can you remember the time where you took it back as the survivor? See, they never leave messages, man. Nobody ever leaves a damn message.
Most of the time, like, I just get interrupted. If I'm trying to do a show, or if I'm trying to do something, that I care about, then all of a sudden the phone will just ring with a bunch of nonsense, and I'm like, oh yeah, these negative energies are just upset, or else they get attracted to just any energy at all. So it's just like, oh, there's something bright is over there. Let's go like harass, or let's try and get some, or whatever. It's kind of like that.
Well, maybe we could do another show in the future just specifically on narcissism and codependency. It could very well be. I'm trying to work with the state legislation on getting some laws changed for victims.
What state are you in?
Pardon?
Where do you live?
I live in Pennsylvania.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
you have any luck with like trying to talk to that political system, or no?
I'm attempting to it. I mean, it's taken me several, sometimes it takes me a whole day to write out what I'm going to talk to them about and really get the wording right. I want laws changed, yeah.
Do you talk to actual human beings, or are you trying to like submit?
Yeah, I'm talking to my state senator and my legislation, Christina Zubek.
And you're talking to them. You're not talking to like a go-between.
Two of them.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah. Um, and I eventually would like to go down to Harrisburg and speak on the legislation floor. They both, Christine's office and Senator Scavello's office have when we spoke, have offered to have me do that. So eventually that is that's on my agenda to do some of this.
Yeah, it's good that you're doing that. I feel like I became turned off to the political system, and I'm not saying that it's never a possibility in the future, but to me the system was so entrenched in like just, what do you call it? It's like not real. It's not relevant to the people, to me, for the most part. So for me to try to talk to one of these talking heads would be like a waste of my time. I would prefer to go out on the ground level, talk to the troops, so to speak, and do my work that way. But if there's a possibility of like actually communicating or actually enacting change through that, then I'd be all for it.
I'm covered in goosebumps. Something really fantastic that came out of it for my soul's role, that came out of all of this trauma that I had healed or am healing through. It is something greatly passionate. I'm very passionate about, Gary, because I had to go and trip and fall through so many things that I just did not want to see others have to trip and fall the same way I did before I got to the legal system. And I'm in a Commonwealth state as well. So we have laws that protect victims here. We just need to get some of them reinstated again. And also I want more funding. So I'm working on that aspect, to trying to navigate how to do that. More funding for the shelters, for these resource centers, for better education, like pamphlets. And I've gone through so many centers and just pulled pamphlets from the centers I can, just to see what they read, these brochures are reading. So I mean, I'm really I'm really trying to do something positive on the education side with the resource centers, and then the Senate side for the laws governing victimization. I might have a stronger constitution than most victims and survivors because of all I've been through. I'm 53. Since I've been 3 years old, I've been through a lot of trauma. Very strong constitution about myself, but I left with barely anything. I was almost talked out of that I was even married. I was almost talked out of a home. One time I was talked to believe, you're going to laugh, my husband talked me into believing that puppies came from eggs. That's how manipulative he was.
You believed it?
I did not. I did. Well, there was, I'm talking about 18 years ago. And then I finally, egg sacks. He was like talking about, I'm like trying to justify it. But yes, he actually almost talked me into believing puppies came from egg sacks. But I went through such trauma with the psychological manipulation and my rights being taken away from. I saw so many women leave with nothing but the shirts and underpants on, and babies in diapers and nothing else. I've seen women terrified to go to court to fight for their homes. And I just was sickened by the whole process of how my relationship ended, and having to lose my belongings and almost be talked out of my rights as a wife and my home, that this pioneered me to become a pioneer, hopefully, for other victims, men and women, because I want more help for men out there too.
Yeah, it's definitely both sides. The court system, to me, to say it in simple terms, is the court system thrives on the people fighting each other. It's the same story for this whole entire realm. Like, the whole energy system is run off of creating conflict and then basically leeching the energy out of that conflict in form of money or in form of actually emotional sort of tapping. But it's almost like manufactured angst, because when a human comes to, and I can speak for myself personally, when I came to my own spot of like peace internally, then I saw very clearly I don't ever have to react emotionally. I don't ever have to yell at somebody. I don't ever have to cuss. I don't ever have to be angry. There are always tools for me to return back to that spot of peace. So then that tells me very clearly that these people that are in these things are being manipulated somehow by something outside of themselves. It's not, whether it's the other person or whether it's the sort of poisonous system in and of itself, or that in conjunction with the other person. It's an external emotional leaching process, and it takes everything.
Yeah, well, again, I'm in a Commonwealth state. I'm very fortunate. The attorneys here are getting wiser. There are several attorneys, and in my area, I can speak for my area alone, many of these attorneys are involved in taking trauma classes so they can understand a victim's side and be a better attorney, which I found fascinating. I was blown away by that. We need more of that. Gary, we may live in a matrix system and this government, governing the mind.
Yeah.
Their, law jargon, court systems, this whole straw man thing. It's litigated. If you get tied up in court, you're in a narcissistic court system. But I really want to believe that people like us, our children, our children's children, we are the change to initiate some of these constructs tumbling down. If I can put my part in the penal system, in the legal system, and be an advocate in the education system, I'm being the change I want to be in this world, whether it's a computerized game or not. I'm putting my love and passion and positivity into something that may be looked at as a very negative, one-sided thing. I don't want to believe that anymore. I don't want to believe that change can't happen in these constructs.
Yeah, the belief is what makes the change not able to be happening.
Right.
It's really it's always just the same thing. It's going back to victim mode, or you're living here. You're able to do something. Like either you blame, point the finger outward, or you say I take responsibility for my own life and for all of those who I touch. And when you do that, then you will receive support. Like people will come and stand by you, and of course there are the things that don't want that to be happening, and there will be opposition, obviously. But to me, there's no point in even being here if you're just going to play the victim. Like it's literally, even if it was just a game, there's no point in even that game.
I just saw, I'm trying to go back on my Facebook post a few days ago. I watched this small movie. It was a long movie, but I watched a portion of the movie, and we are creators, right? We've created these systems, this patriarch system, the Satanist system, black magic, all of this stuff. We're concentrating on it. You go on somebody's news feed, it's all negative stuff about the cannibalism and MK Ultra and Satanism and SSP, and yes, that's all very well said. Yes, we know it's out there. So the more we feed into that news feed,
yeah,
the more looshing it is, the more creative it becomes, the more controlling it is, right? So this movie was showing us, what if this is what I do like almost every day. I used to do it every single holiday. Like I wouldn't participate in family holidays, and I would take the whole day and just rhyme these beautiful rhymes for humanity. So what if every day that each one of us envisioned how we want the world to be? How would you want your government to be? How would you want your neighbors to be? How would you want this living life to be? And if you could devote 2 minutes a day to just that, imagine the creation. That would have covered in goosebumps saying that. imagine the creation that would come out of that. And it's almost like the Ouroboros. I mean, how many times have we probably initiated mass meditation, mass doing something mass like this, so change would take place. So everybody I've talked to, like that, I'm doing this Senate thing and want to get brochures changed to educate victims better. I get a lot of like, oh, good luck, JoJo. You're going down a road you're never going to win. And I'm like, thanks a lot, man. Where's your co-creation?
Right.
Manifest. Gary, I'm not going to believe that anymore. I'm not going to feed the news feed. I'm going to feed the way I'm creating now, the way I'm manifesting. And I hope everybody would follow me. Do 2 minutes a day. How do you want to see your brothers and sisters? How do you want to see your neighbors? How do you want to see your schools? How do you want to see your foods? How do you want to see healthcare? How do you want to see government? How do you want to see peace? If we are so news feeded out on war, where's your peace? I own the peace. I'm doing my part. I'm sure you do yours. You do this beautiful meditation every day on YouTube and putting it out to the collective. And every time we heal something in ourselves, we're healing a piece of this collective consciousness. And maybe waking somebody else up that might be an NPC in program mode.
Yeah, it's we even have it up on the board there. We made a little thing, like as far as how we're positioning ourselves daily to start the day, and I put up there apply steady pressure daily. And that means without expectation. Like you have to drop the expectation.
Yeah.
And the way I do it, like I honed it down to I drop it completely. Like I just stay present. Dropping expectation to me literally means staying present, because expectation is just your mind yelling out the possibilities that it wants, right? And to me, that's where the magic is able to happen. If you can apply steady pressure daily toward that world that you wish to see, right? Live it, be it, and drop expectations. It literally happens. Like I know it happens. It's happening with me. Like it does work, but you just have to stay on it. It's like it's a steady trickle thing.
Yeah, here's a little tidbit I hope your listening audience can really get a grip on, because this helped me immensely. There is, when we're living life, we get in this yearning mode. We're yearning for love. We're yearning for career. We're yearning for money. We're yearning for whatever. To me, that's the loosh trap. That is a huge loosh trap. If you put the yearning energy in, it very seldomly gives you back.
Right.
So women are yearning for their partner. Men are yearning for a better career or whatever they're yearning for, whatever this whole populace is yearning for. And to me, that's a huge reptilian looshing feeding frenzy, because so much pain and grief comes out of the yearn when it's not returned, right? The yearn doesn't give a return. So when you put like your order in, like I know I'm connected, my Wi-Fi is connected right into infinite source. I am connected into the Wi-Fi of the universe, of infinite source. And I might put my order in. All right, universe, here's my order. This is what I would like for my divine selection. And I'll give my order and surrender it over to no expectations. And in that present now, that surrendering to no expectations gives back. It's your order.
And it gives permission for the universe to give back in ways that you can't comprehend, because the orders that we put in normally are the boxed mindsets of the sort of things we're supposed to be wanting and whatnot. And you remove the possibility of mystery, magic, and intrigue, all of that stuff. by basically having an expectation. So if you just give your order and say, this is generally what I would like to have energetically, and then hands off, but just do that daily, it will come around. It does. It has to.
I think you have to be disciplined though, because I know through this last dark night of the soul of mine, I'm really sorry. It forced me into being so disciplined with my energy and these areas of my life, these aspects of my life that I really wanted to be grounded in all aspects of my life. I felt that if I'm here to live on this planet and to be a living source for myself, that I really wanted to excel in all areas of my life, health, fitness, mentalism, emotions, love, friendships, career, spirituality. And I teach this 9-level life model now that I'm very disciplined in. So when one of my thoughts goes astray, I know to reel it back in, or I know, to stay on my routine of discipline. And it doesn't have to be the same routine every day. Like I can mix, might do the same thing for 7 days, but I'll concentrate on each of those 9 areas, even if it's just 20 minutes on each of those 9 areas. And that's really provided me so much more fullness too. And I think a lot of people get lost in their emotions and their mentalism if they're not staying disciplined in something. Like meditation in the morning. Maybe that's not a good time for other people to meditate. You need to know your biorhythms of your body clock. So for me, mornings are not good for me to meditate. Morning is like the time where I write really good. I write good, I think good, I get my work done. I do the hardest shit first. Like the hardest stuff I have to do, I do it immediately in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's a phone call I have to make, bills I have to pay, something I have to read for my job. I just get all the hard stuff out of the way first, and then I will maintain those 9 areas of my life. And meditation for me happens, after I'm done with the hard stuff in the morning. Then I can get into great meditations, affirmation work, education. So in fitness, your health, your diet. And I think it's really important that you do take the time. If you want a level of excellence in yourself, you really have to look at all the levels of yourself and find the levels of excellence that you want to achieve.
Yeah. It's good. It is good to have systems. If systems work for you, systems never really worked for me very well. But that was back when I was in sort of survival mode. So I'm coming to a place in my life where I'm allowing some systems in, and when I say system, I literally mean like any repetition. I was literally like I didn't repeat anything, but I'm coming to appreciate what it is to have a routine at all. Like that's partially why I'm doing the meditation at 9 in the morning. It's more for me really than I know people benefit from it, but just for me to do that daily at 9. If you do one thing in your life that you just do the same thing, you only need to do one. Like, say I'm gonna think positive thoughts about my family at 8 o'clock in the morning, from 8 till 8:10, and do that every day. Your whole life will change if you do that every day for 30 days, for 60 days.
21 to 30 days it takes to reprogram.
Yeah, and then everything else starts flowing. It's like you put sticks in a river. Like, the river flows around it. You are changing the river by placing one stick. And that's what you do with routines. You're putting one stick in. You're saying this is going to be the constant, and the whole rest of my life, if I'm not a fan of routines, will flow around that. And that the outside of that routine will be my creative potential, right?
Well, that's smart. That's a smart way to do it. If you're not structured, I think that's a really smart way to do it. Actually, as a targeted individual, that's a really smart way to get out of targeting, to not be structured. But
That's probably why I think that's partially why I did that, because I dealt with like the mind virus thing. It, a lot of people don't understand what that is, but it's like take targeted individual and just like go as far as you can go with it mentally. And
The neural monitoring, you have the them sending thoughts
well,
into.
it wasn't so much that it was like a bad weed experience, but it was entrainment. It was trying to entrain my every last part of myself, and I had to learn how to move around it. You learn to find like the smallest nuance of movement that evades the tracking, and like when I came out of it, when I finally got like didn't get consumed, basically, I realized I knew that the unpredictability is salvation from that. Like you don't even predict your own movements. You find out what it is that the life is outside of your own conceptions, outside of your own predictions, and you rest in that. Like that part, the thing will have to track the whole universe if it wants to entrain you at that point.
Yeah, yeah, it's a smart way. I think even like with the routine that I have, I change up my routine, but I just make sure I stay on. I make sure I dedicate those 9 points of myself. For me, in recovery as a codependent, it's really important to me. I have huge um, goals for myself, taken in little steps. I have huge desire for myself. Maybe I don't know how to put it. So it's really important that I concentrate at least on those areas in myself. And
What are you wanna read them out? What are these? What are the 9 things?
yeah, let me just, Hank, let me just go grab something here.
Yeah.
Hold on a second. Hold on a second here. Yeah. So, yes, Gary, I'm sorry, I'm writing up going to be working with some webinars. So, relationship to self. Oh, let me turn the video back on here. Your relationship to yourself, your mental and your emotional, your spirituality and your divinity, your relationship to others, friends, and society, fitness and diet, career, education, love, romance, home, family, responsibility, fun and hobbies, rest and dreams. So those are like the 9 areas that I have dedicated every day to. Even if it's, like I said, even if it's 20 minutes, even if it's 2 minutes. Look, when I started out, it was literally seconds at a time that I could do this. Last year I was in really, really rough shape. So, and I hadn't been doing any of my foundations or anything, not until after September, after that near-death experience. So, not only am I responsible for my own energy doing these 5 foundations throughout the day, these are the 9 areas of myself that I really wanted to dedicate a change. When you come through Dark Night of the Soul, you don't surface with the same personality. You really don't. Your whole mentalism changes, your whole emotional body changes, your pain body changes. You're not the same personality. You can't expect to have, I don't know if it would call it personality, maybe. You can't expect to have the same mindset and emotional set and have a different life. That's, I guess, what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Completely different mindset, completely different set of emotions, the way I handle myself. And if I were in the same mindset that I have been the last 19 years, nothing would be working right now in my life. So,
Yeah, they say that whole thing about definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results.
Yeah, sure. And I think that's where people get really stuck, because they're like, JoJo, I can't get out of this. I can't, I'll never meet the love of my life, or I'll never have the career. I'm always going to have these suicidal thoughts. Whatever. I'm always going to be targeted.
Mm-hmm.
Then you are.
Yeah.
Then you're not going to have love. Then you're not going to have the career. If I carried my same belief systems even 2 years ago, I wouldn't be manifesting so quick. I'm manifesting in less than 4 months, folks. If I can do it, anybody can do this. You know, it really is just your will and desire is really important, but you have to really work your ass off to make these changes in yourself, and not want to be anything like your past.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to repeat those patterns. You don't want the same type of people. You don't want the same type of experiences. And if you don't want that so bad, you are going to do everything inside you to change. So you surface a different person and never have to go back to that old life model or stay victimized or stay in survival mode. No, thank you. Folks, it's so much easier to do it this way than to stay in that old pain or that old belief system and that old loss of hope.
Yeah, and that place will always have you. Like if it's a, you know, it's got a house and it's gonna set up dinner for you, and it will take care of you in the way that, you know, like it's comforting to go through the routines of that. But when you're truly ready to move to something different and you express that in every way that you can, it has to happen. It's only if you still have internal blockages or ties or, you know, self doubts, things like that, will drag you back. But
Yeah, well, you know, we look. I still get faced with self doubt. I mean, this is a journey I'm on. It's some things feel scary to me. I mean, I'm trying all these new things. Is there a level of fear? I want to call it excitement instead of fear. Is there a
yeah,
level of anxiety? It's stepping into an unknown. So you change the perception. Um, I give warning labels though to people, like if you really want to like transform everything, not only about yourself, but about your life, your living conditions, your experiences, it is going to be the most challenging thing you have ever done for yourself. And it will almost feel worse than the past you stepped out of in
hmm
the beginning.
for a little while, yeah,
Past you've stepped out of in the
yeah,
beginning. But it is so worth it. So worth it, folks. You know, to have a complete level of different experiences it's worth the pain. It's worth that first couple of months of really
yeah.
feeling it.
Definitely, and also just utilize resources. You know, like if you have my channel, you have other people, you have the work you're doing. There's lots of people out there doing giving output that is like an offer to everyone who's listening to jump in some way, shape, or form, and then that's how the energy gets started, right? Like someone sees this energy, that it changes their day in a certain way. Maybe they go create something, and it just sort of snowballs. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, and that helps a lot too. If we have all these resources, you know, YouTube is a wonderful resource. We've got great affirmations on there, great hypnosis, great NLP, great uh, session work available. If you're a codependent, there's lots of narcissistic recovery channels out there. There's wonderful lectures to listen to on the brain, on supernatural abilities, on energy mastery, whatever education you want to get in, whether it's tarot or astrology, magic.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we have these resources to use, so let's use them and not make excuses anymore. And that was one of the things I became very disciplined in myself and my own recovery.
Excuses.
No, getting into resources,
Ah,
really using
yeah,
resources
yeah.
around me. And I'm talking not only YouTube, but in my area. You know, I'm with the Women's Resource Center. I still go to counseling with them. I use a therapist that helps me with EMDR and EFT. And then I take my own responsibility and I do like my own TRE sessions. I do my own NLP sessions, hypnotherapy sessions, affirmation sessions. I work on, you know, my own education. And I'm really utilizing the resources in my area. And I think people really should reach out to them too. I know we don't have phone books anymore, and but get online and find out who your community resources are, and don't be afraid to use them. I, you know, I there was one thing I really had to learn last year. Was in such fragile shape. July and August, I was so fragile that I had to reach out to my local resources for mental health and development. And it was a kick in my ass. I mean, I went kicking and screaming, but had it not been for that place, I, I'm glad I finally made the phone call, and I'm glad I started having this counseling with those people, and they directed me to these other resources. So if anybody is in crisis, folks, you've got to find the resources in your area. And some of them will be really good and some of them won't be so good. It depends where you're living, in a small town or a city. But there's abuse centers, there's mental health centers, and the mental health and development services will give you a lot more, they'll give you a lot more resources than you really even thought you had in your area. So I was really glad for them. They help me even find legal help.
Yeah, it's available. Jolene, I think I'm gonna try and wrap it up a bit here. We're a little over an hour now.
Good.
Do you have any closing remarks, or if you have a website or something you'd like to direct people to that's interested?
Yeah. Well, right now I'm doing consultations and psychic readings with oracle cards, just on Facebook right now. My website I just started working on with a new group of people. It's not ready yet. So Facebook, Jolene, JoJo Seebacher, or my pro page, Solutions, SOUL, Solutions at Spiritual Life Journeys. Closing remarks are, I think we've covered a lot here, Gary. I think we've done a lot here.
Yeah, it was good. Thank you for coming on, and yeah, we'll see how it goes. Just my thing is for myself, and I think would be useful to others as well. It's the internal energetic state of yourself that's important. Nothing else is important. Everything follows that. So if you keep your vibes up, if you keep your energy up, your day will flow correctly. If you wake up feeling like shit and you don't do something about it, your day will also appropriately follow that.
Exactly. There you have it. That's a great place to end it on.
Yeah. Thank you, Jolene. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'll see you around, okay?
All right.
Okay. Trying to what?
Take too much crap.